You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
Donald Trump is free and clear. In a historic decision, the United States Senate acquitted President Donald Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress over his pressuring of Ukraine to influence the 2020 presidential election campaign. Trump has now become only the third US president to be impeached. In November 2020, he'll be the first impeached US president to go for re-election. How was Trump acquitted despite evidence that he had abused power to try and influence the 2020 elections? What effect will this have on his popularity and the outcome of the 2020 presidential elections? Let's find out. Hello and welcome back to the Big Story podcast. I'm Vishnu Gopinath. Today we are walking you through United States President Donald Trump's acquittal and how it got there. You're going to hear from the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts, as well as the Republican Senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, as well as the man himself, Donald Trump. If you like this podcast, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, Radio.com, and most other platforms. By the way, we've done an entire podcast detailing the charges that Trump was accused of. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. I'll also explain it in brief in a minute. But first, Trump was facing removal from office on two charges. One, the abuse of power, and second, obstruction of Congress. On the charge of abuse of power, the US Senate found him not guilty by a vote of 52 to 48. On the charge of obstruction of Congress, Trump was found not guilty by a margin of 53 to 47.
The Senate, having tried Donald John Trump, President of the United States, upon two articles of impeachment exhibited against him by the House of Representatives, and two-thirds of the senators present not having found him guilty of the charges contained therein, it is, therefore, ordered and adjudged that the said Donald John Trump be, and he is hereby, acquitted of the charges in said articles.
That's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts. Of course, Trump's acquittal came as a surprise to almost no one. Why? The US Senate is a 100-member House. It requires a two-thirds majority or 67 votes in favor of removal of the president. And similar to how the BJP enjoys a majority in the Lok Sabha, the Republicans enjoy a majority in the Senate. The Republican Party has 53 seats in the Senate, giving them a comfortable majority. Only one Republican leader voted against Trump on the charge of obstruction to Congress. That's Utah Senator Mitt Romney.
The president asked a foreign government to investigate his political rival. The president withheld vital military funds from that government to press it to do so. The president delayed funds for an American ally at war with Russian invaders. The president's purpose was personal and political. Accordingly, the president is guilty of an appalling abuse of public trust. What he did was not perfect. No, it was a flagrant assault on our electoral rights, our national security, and our fundamental values. Corrupting an election to keep oneself in office is perhaps the most abusive and destructive violation of one's oath of office that I can imagine. I'm aware that there are people in my party and in my state who will strenuously disapprove of my decision, and in some quarters I will be vehemently denounced. I'm sure to hear abuse from the president and his supporters. Does anyone seriously believe that I would consent to these consequences other than from an inescapable conviction that my oath before God demanded it of me?
Want to hear the rest of this podcast? Check out the link to the full episode in the description below and follow the Quint on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and all other platforms we are on.